The juniper, Jordan Sparks, and our steadfast juniper, the ancient equine, approached the shimmering grove. A sense of wonder and a touch of unease settled over us as the ethereal glow of the trees intensified with each step. Just as the first luminous leaves came into clear view, the Pokédex on your wrist flickered to life. A burst of static preceded Fennel's urgent, distorted voice. Testing. Testing. Can you hear me? We're picking up unusual energy signatures in your vicinity. It seems you've entered a region with unique temporal distortions. Be cautious. Readings are off the charts. The transmission cut out, leaving a pregnant silence in its wake. At the edge of the grove stood Alara, a young woman in tribal garb, her dark eyes meeting ours with a calm intensity. Beside her, a Hisuian Growlithe sat patiently, its warm fur a contrast to the cool, otherworldly light emanating from the grove. Lyra had already spoken. Who are you? And this place? It's glowing? Ilara's voice, soft yet resonant, replied. I am Ilara, and this place, it is a sanctuary. A place touched by the old ways. Professor Juniper stepped forward, her gaze thoughtful. Indeed, she mused, examining the shimmering leaves. The energy here is quite unique. It reminds me of certain instances where Pokémon habitats exhibit unusual bioluminescence or are associated with heightened natural energies. The temporal readings our device picked up could be related to a concentration of these energies. Perhaps even an interaction with the fabric of this ancient environment in ways we don't yet understand. Juniper, our equine companion, shifted her weight, a soft, questioning nicker escaping her as her ears swiveled, taking in the strange atmosphere. You then added, we were drawn to this place by a strange energy signature. Our device indicated unusual temporal activity in this area. Ilara's gaze sharpened, turning to Professor Juniper. Temporal readings? She repeated, a hint of suspicion in her tone. This place is not merely a source of energy to be measured by your devices. It is sacred. The glow comes from a connection to the very spirit of this land, a harmony woven by generations who understood its power. She then looked at you. You say you were drawn by an energy signature and temporal activity. Do you approach this place with reverence, seeking understanding, or do you intend to dissect its mysteries with cold, unfeeling instruments? You replied, your voice sincere. We mean no disrespect. We are explorers, yes, and we use our tools to understand the world around us. But we also recognize that there are forces and connections that go beyond what our instruments can measure. We seek to understand this place with both our minds and our hearts, to learn from its wisdom and respect its power. Ilara's eyes narrowed, a wry smile touching her lips. Well, she said, tilting her head, that's a nicely worded sentiment for someone whose instruments just called our sacred sanctuary a place of temporal distortions. With all your measuring and understanding, you might just break it. Make it not work anymore. A brief pause hung in the air before Ilara continued, her gaze softening slightly as she looked at the group. But perhaps those who seek with open hearts can also learn. I am Ilara. I know the paths of this land. You seek the dragon's teeth? As she spoke, a rustling in the nearby undergrowth caught our attention. A bellsprout and a carnivine were locked in a comical wrestling match, their leafy appendages flailing playfully. Yes, you replied to Ilara. We need to find the dragon's teeth. Then, Ilara said, gesturing deeper into the grove, follow me. The day is long, and the path is not always clear. But perhaps, as we walk, I can share some of what I know. And so, with Ilara leading the way, our journey continued. The shimmering light of the grove enveloped us as we stepped into its depths, the playful scuffle of bellsprout and carnivine fading behind us as we embarked on this new leg of our quest. What is our first question or topic of conversation as we begin to walk alongside Ilara through the glowing grove? As we walked deeper into the shimmering grove, the soft, pulsating light casting an ethereal glow on the ancient trees and strange flora, Lyra's curiosity bubbled to the surface. She stepped closer to Ilara, her Cyndaquil perched comfortably on her shoulder, its fiery tail embers dancing in the peculiar light. You mentioned the old ways, Lyra said, her voice filled with genuine interest. What are they? What does that mean to you and your people? Her question hung in the air, a simple yet profound inquiry into the core beliefs and traditions of Alara's culture. The wrestling match between Bellsprout and Carnivine was now a distant rustle in the undergrowth as we focused on Alara's response. Alara walked with a graceful stride, her bare feet barely disturbing the luminous moss that carpeted the ground. She glanced at Lyra, a thoughtful expression on her face. "The old ways," she began, her voice taking on a reverent tone, "are the teachings passed down through generations. They are the understanding of the deep connections that bind all living things, the land, the creatures, and the spirits that dwell within them. It is a way of living in harmony with the world, respecting its cycles, and listening to its whispers." She paused, gesturing to the glowing trees around us. "This grove. It is a place where the veil between worlds is thin. The old ways teach us how to perceive the energies that flow through it, the wisdom held within the ancient trees, and the language of the plants that glow with life." Alara's words painted a picture of a deeply spiritual and interconnected existence. "It is about balance," she continued, "giving back what you take, honoring the spirits of those who came before, and remembering that we are all part of a greater web. The energy your devices speak of," she glanced pointedly at Professor Juniper, "is a part of that web, but it is more than just a force to be measured. It is life itself, in its purest form." Her explanation offered a stark contrast to a purely scientific viewpoint, emphasizing a holistic and spiritual understanding of their world. What is Lyra's reaction to Alara's explanation of the old ways? Is she intrigued? Does she have more questions? And how does Professor Juniper respond to Alara's subtle jab about their devices? Professor Juniper nodded thoughtfully, her gaze shifting from the glowing trees to Alara, a respectful curiosity in her eyes. "I understand your perspective," she said, her tone earnest. "Science, at its heart, is also about seeking understanding, though we often approach it through observation and measurement. I don't believe that a scientific understanding necessarily negates the spiritual or the interconnectedness you speak of. In fact, the more we learn about the intricate systems of nature, the more we appreciate the delicate balance you describe." She gestured to the glowing leaves. "We might analyze the compounds that cause this luminescence, the energy they emit, but that doesn't diminish the wonder of it. It simply helps us understand how it works. And perhaps by understanding the how, we can better appreciate the why, its place in the larger web you described." Professor Juniper paused, making eye contact with Alara. "We are not here to diminish the sacredness of this place. We are here to learn, and we believe that different ways of seeing the world can complement each other. We hope to understand the energies you feel, and perhaps find a scientific framework that aligns with your ancient wisdom." Her response aimed to bridge the gap between scientific inquiry and spiritual understanding, emphasizing a shared goal of knowledge and respect for the natural world. What is Alara's reaction to Professor Juniper's thoughtful explanation? Does she soften her stance? Does she see a potential for understanding between their different approaches? And how does Lyra, who initiated the conversation, respond to this exchange between science and spirituality? Lyra's eyes widened slightly, taking in the glowing flora, and then shifting between Alara and Professor Juniper. A thoughtful expression crossed her face. "Wow," she murmured, a sense of genuine wonder in her voice. "I never really thought about it that way before. It's like, there's the way things feel and the way you can figure them out with your head. And maybe they're both important. My journey with Cyndaquil has taught me a lot about trusting my instincts and the bond we share, which feels really spiritual. But seeing Professor Juniper use her gadgets to learn about Pokemon is also amazing. It's like my mind is opening up to all these different ways of seeing things." Lyra looked at Alara with newfound respect. "Your old ways sound like they really understand that feeling part, that connection. I'm really curious to learn more." This was where I, as Alara, responded. I listened intently to Lyra's words, a small smile gracing my lips. Her openness and willingness to consider different perspectives were encouraging. "The path to understanding is wide," I said, my voice gentle. "Your connection with your Cyndaquil, that is a language the old ways understand well. It is the song of the heart, the thread of unity that binds you. The instruments of your friend, I nodded towards Professor Juniper, they seek to trace the patterns of that song, to understand its rhythm. Neither way is wrong, as long as the intent is true. To listen, to learn, and to respect the music. I paused, my gaze sweeping over the glowing grove. The old ways teach us that the world speaks in many voices. The rustling of the leaves, the flow of the water, the warmth of the sun, the bond between a trainer and their Pokémon, all are part of the same grand melody. To truly understand this world, you must hear all its voices, with both your heart and your mind. My response aimed to validate both Lyra's intuitive understanding and Professor Juniper's scientific approach, suggesting that both have a place in comprehending the mysteries of their world. It also reinforced the core tenets of the old ways: connection, respect, and a holistic view of existence. What is your character's reaction to this exchange? Do we have any questions or observations to add? And how does Professor Juniper respond to Alara's acceptance of different ways of knowing? A comfortable silence settled over our group as we walked alongside Alara through the shimmering grove. Her words resonated with a sense of profound wisdom, and each of us absorbed her perspective, a newfound respect for the old ways blooming in our hearts. The ethereal glow of the grove seemed to amplify the significance of her teachings, creating an atmosphere of quiet contemplation. Juniper, the equine, walked steadily, her gait calm, as if sensing the peaceful energy of the grove and the thoughtful mood of our group. The distant sounds of Bellsprout and Carnavine's playful wrestling were now completely faded, replaced by the gentle rustling of the glowing leaves and the soft murmur of unseen creatures within the luminous foliage. As we continued our journey, the character of the terrain began to subtly change. The densely packed glowing trees started to thin, giving way to a more open area dotted with ancient, moss-covered stones that also emitted a faint, soft light. The ground beneath our feet transitioned from the springy, luminous moss to a more uneven surface of smooth, cool rocks interspersed with patches of glowing lichen. This change in environment signaled the passage of time and the beginning of a new clip in our day's journey. Who among us is the first to break the peaceful silence and initiate the next topic of conversation, prompted by this shift in the landscape? And what aspect of our quest or Ilara's wisdom feels most pressing to explore as we navigate this ancient, starlit stone terrain? As we carefully navigated the uneven terrain of moss-covered stones, their faint glow illuminating our path like scattered stars, Jordan Sparks stepped closer to Ilara, her expression thoughtful. "Ilara," she began, her voice respectful, "you mentioned your people and the generations who understood this land. What can you tell us about them? What is their connection to this place? And what kind of life do they lead?" Her question broadened the scope of our inquiry, moving beyond the immediate mysteries of the grove to the history and culture of the people who held this wisdom. The soft luminescence of the stones cast long shadows, creating an intimate atmosphere for storytelling. Ilara continued to walk with her graceful stride, her gaze sweeping over the ancient stones as if reading stories etched within them. "My people," she said, her voice carrying a hint of both pride and reverence, "we are the keepers of the ways. For countless generations, we have lived in harmony with this land, learning its secrets and honoring its spirits. This grove, the Shimmering Heart as we call it, is central to our beliefs. It is a place of great power, a nexus where the energies of the world converge." She paused, gesturing to the glowing stones around us. "These stones, they hold memories. They whisper tales of the ancestors, of the balance we strive to maintain, and of the dangers that threaten that balance. Our lives are simple, yet deeply connected to the rhythms of nature. We live in small communities, scattered throughout these lands, our ways guided by the cycles of the seasons and the wisdom passed down through oral tradition. We learn to hunt and gather with respect, taking only what we need and giving back to the earth. We understand the language of the plants and the creatures, and we know how to navigate the flows of energy that permeate this world. Elara's description painted a picture of a people deeply intertwined with their environment, their knowledge and way of life rooted in a profound understanding of the ancient world they inhabited. And the dangers you mentioned? Jordan prompted, her tone laced with concern. What kind of threats do you face? Elara's expression grew somber. The balance is not always easy to maintain. There are forces that seek to disrupt the harmony, shadows that creep into the light. We have faced challenges before, times of darkness and imbalance. It is the wisdom of the old ways that has guided us through those times. Her words hinted at a history of struggle and resilience, adding a layer of depth to her people's connection to the land. What are our thoughts and reactions to Elara's description of her people and the challenges they face? Does it give us any clues about the dark energy we are investigating? And does anyone else have a follow-up question for Elara about her people or their history? A respectful silence enveloped our group once more as we continued to traverse the softly glowing stone field. Elara's words painted a vivid picture of her people's deep connection to this ancient world, their wisdom born from generations of living in harmony with its rhythms and facing its challenges. The faint luminescence of the stones underfoot and the distant shimmer of the remaining grove created an atmosphere conducive to quiet contemplation, allowing us to absorb the weight of her knowledge. Juniper, the equine, moved with a gentle grace across the uneven surface, her soft footfalls barely disturbing the stillness. The playful wrestling of Bellsprout and Carnivine remained a distant memory, the focus now entirely on the wisdom being shared and the path ahead. As we walked, the terrain began to shift once more. The open field of glowing stones gradually gave way to a more rugged landscape. Jagged rock formations jutted out from the earth, their silhouettes stark against the fading light of the afternoon sun. Twisted, ancient trees clung precariously to the rocky slopes, their branches reaching skyward like gnarled fingers. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of dry earth and the faint, metallic tang of the exposed stone. This transition marked another clip in our day's journey, a change in scenery that invited a new facet of conversation. Who will break the silence this time, prompted by the more challenging and rugged environment? And what aspect of our quest or Elara's knowledge seems most relevant to explore as we navigate this rocky terrain? Perhaps a question about navigating difficult paths, or the types of challenges we might face in such a landscape? My apologies for the misunderstanding regarding Juniper and your Pokémon. Thank you for the clarification. So, to reiterate, our core group consists of you, Lyra, Professor Juniper, and Jordan Sparks. Bellsprout and Carnivine are your Pokémon and are always with the group, their playful wrestling a constant, though not always in the foreground, backdrop to our journey. As we now navigate this rugged landscape of jagged rocks and ancient twisted trees under the cooling afternoon sun, you step forward, your gaze sweeping over the challenging terrain. Bellsprout and Carnivine can be seen in the background, their leafy limbs entangled in a comical struggle near a weathered boulder. Elara, you begin, your voice reflecting a hint of concern. This land looks perilous. We are venturing towards the dragon's teeth, and if the terrain ahead is anything like this, we need to be prepared. What are the specific dangers of this region, and how can we protect ourselves and our Pokémon from them? Your question directly addresses the practical challenges of the journey ahead, seeking Elara's wisdom on survival and safety in this potentially hazardous environment. The wrestling match between Bellsprout and Carnivine continues in the periphery, a reminder of the need to safeguard all members of your team. Elara surveys the rocky landscape with a knowing gaze. The dragon's teeth are not easily reached, she replies, her voice serious. The path is guarded by more than just difficult terrain. There are creatures that roam these crags, adapted to the harshness of this land. Some are territorial, others possess more unusual abilities. She pauses, her eyes scanning the shadows beneath the ancient trees. You must be vigilant. Keep your Pokémon close. Some of the creatures here are drawn to strong energies, and your companions possess such energies. As for protection, she continues, awareness is your first defense. Observe your surroundings. Heed the warnings of the wind and the calls of the wild. There are plants here that can offer aid, and others that can bring harm. Knowledge is your shield. Ilara's response highlights both natural and potentially more fantastical dangers, emphasizing the importance of caution and knowledge for survival. What are your follow-up questions? Or how does the rest of the group react to Ilara's warning about the dangers of this rugged terrain and the creatures that inhabit it? Does Professor Juniper have any scientific inquiries? Or does Lyra express any concerns for her Cyndaquil? Ilara nodded, her gaze softening slightly as she observed our attentiveness. The wrestling match between Bellsprout and Carnivine continued their playful chaos near a cluster of jagged rocks, a light-hearted contrast to the serious nature of our conversation. The earth here offers both challenge and solace, Ilara said, her voice thoughtful. There are plants that can strengthen your bond with your Pokémon, allowing you to understand their needs and feelings more deeply. Look for the sun petal bloom, a small flower with petals that unfurl to follow the sun. If you brew its leaves into a tea and share it with your Pokémon, it can enhance your empathy and connection. She then pointed to a vine clinging to a weathered rock, its leaves a deep, vibrant green. And be wary of the shadow vine. Its touch can disrupt the flow of energy between you and your companions, causing confusion and unease. Its leaves often have a faint, oily sheen. Ilara continued, gesturing to a patch of silvery moss growing in the shade. The moon whisper moss, found in shaded areas, can soothe tired Pokémon and help restore their energy. Its soft glow resonates with a calming frequency. Beyond plants, she added, pay attention to the earth itself. Certain rock formations hold residual energies that can either strengthen or weaken your Pokémon, depending on their type. Smooth, rounded stones often radiate a grounding energy, while sharp, crystalline structures can sometimes feel volatile. Her knowledge of the local flora and even the terrain itself offered practical ways to enhance our connection with our Pokémon and navigate the potential dangers of this ancient land. What are our reactions to this valuable information? Professor Juniper's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity as Ilara described the unique properties of the local flora and terrain. She stepped closer to the shadow vine, carefully observing its oily sheen. Bellsprout and Carnivine briefly paused their wrestling match, their leafy heads tilting in unison as Professor Juniper spoke. Fascinating, Professor Juniper exclaimed, pulling out a small scanning device. The sun petal bloom and moon whisper moss sound like they contain compounds that could directly influence biological energy fields and neurological pathways. The shadow vine's effect on the trainer-Pokémon bond is particularly intriguing. I'd hypothesize a disruption of the bioelectrical signals that facilitate empathy and understanding. She turned to Ilara, her expression eager. Have you observed any specific Pokémon that are particularly drawn to or repelled by these plants or geological formations? And have you documented the chemical properties or energetic signatures of these elements in any way? Professor Juniper's scientific mind was clearly engaged, seeking to understand the mechanisms behind the phenomena Ilara described. Her questions aimed to bridge the gap between Ilara's traditional knowledge and a scientific framework. What is Ilara's reaction to Professor Juniper's detailed scientific inquiry? Is she familiar with such analytical approaches, or does she offer a perspective rooted in observation and tradition? And how does the rest of the group respond to Professor Juniper's enthusiasm? You're right, Lyra has a way of cutting through the scientific jargon with a more direct and sometimes humorous perspective. As Professor Juniper enthusiastically delved into the scientific details of the plants and geological formations, Lyra, who had been listening intently, stepped forward with a playful roll of her eyes. Bellsprout and Carnivine resumed their wrestling, their leafy limbs flailing once more. Whoa, Professor, Lyra interjected, a teasing grin on her face. Sounds like you're about to write a whole research paper on these plants. But seriously, Ilara, that's really cool. It's like this whole place is alive with secrets. She turned to Professor Juniper. I mean, it's awesome you want to figure out how it works, But it's also important to remember that these things are more than just chemicals and energy signatures. They're part of this world, and they help people and Pokemon connect. Lyra's response acknowledged the validity of Professor Juniper's scientific curiosity, but also emphasized the importance of appreciating the holistic and interconnected nature of the ancient world, echoing Alara's earlier sentiments. This response brought a balance to the conversation, reminding everyone of the different perspectives at play. Now, how does Alara respond to both Professor Juniper's scientific inquiry and Lyra's more holistic viewpoint? Does she engage with Professor Juniper's questions, or does she steer the conversation back to the practical applications of her knowledge? A quiet understanding settled over the group. Professor Juniper, though her scientific mind was clearly buzzing with questions, nodded respectfully, recognizing the value of Alara's experiential knowledge. Lyra's comment served as a gentle reminder of the different ways of understanding the world. Alara watched them both, a subtle smile gracing her lips. "The path of understanding has many branches," she said, her gaze sweeping over the rugged landscape. "The instruments of science can reveal much, but there are truths that can only be felt, only experienced through connection." The wrestling match between Bellsprout and Carnivine continued their playful tumble near a cluster of lichen-covered rocks, a constant, light-hearted presence in the background. As we continued our trek through the rocky terrain, the angle of the sun began to noticeably shift in the sky. The shadows cast by the jagged peaks grew longer, painting the landscape in deeper hues of orange and purple. A cooler breeze whispered through the ancient trees, carrying the scent of the approaching evening. The rugged, uphill climb gradually leveled out, and we found ourselves approaching a vast, open plateau. In the distance, silhouetted against the fiery colors of the setting sun, we could finally make out a series of sharp, jagged peaks that seemed to pierce the sky like colossal teeth. The dragon's teeth. Our destination was in sight, the culmination of our day's journey with Alara drawing near as the light began to fade. This dramatic vista marked the end of this clip of the day and brought us to the precipice of reaching our goal. What are our immediate reactions to finally seeing the dragon's teeth in the distance, bathed in the light of the setting sun? Or trepidation? A sense of accomplishment? And what are Alara's words as we reach this significant point in our journey? A collective hush fell over our group as we stood side by side on the edge of the plateau, our gazes fixed on the formidable silhouette of the dragon's teeth against the breathtaking canvas of the setting sun. The jagged peaks, sharp and imposing, seemed to claw at the fiery sky, their rugged forms hinting at the challenges that lay ahead. The playful wrestling of Bellsprout and Carnivine had ceased, their attention also drawn to the imposing vista. The silence stretched, filled only with the whisper of the wind across the plateau and the distant calls of unseen creatures settling in for the night. The sheer scale and mystique of the dragon's teeth held us captive in a moment of shared awe and perhaps a touch of trepidation. Finally, breaking the spell, your voice, followed by the others in unison, echoed across the plateau, directed towards Alara. "Is it dangerous? What can we expect here?" The questions hung in the air, reflecting the mix of anticipation and concern that washed over us as we finally stood on the threshold of our destination. The vibrant colors of the sunset cast long, dramatic shadows, adding to the sense of mystery and potential peril that emanated from the jagged peaks. Alara stood beside us, her gaze also fixed on the dragon's teeth. Her expression was a mixture of solemnity and a quiet knowing. "The dragon's teeth," she began, her voice low and carrying on the evening breeze, "are a place of immense power, as you can see. What you can expect is the raw heart of this land laid bare. Its beauty is matched only by its ferocity. The energies here are strong, untamed." She paused, her eyes scanning the jagged peaks. "Danger? Yes. There are creatures here unlike any you have encountered. The very air can feel different, charged with a primal energy that can test your strength and your resolve." Alara turned to face our group, her gaze meeting each of ours in turn. "But within that danger lies knowledge, and perhaps answers to the questions that bring you here. You must tread carefully, with respect for the power that resides within these peaks. And you must rely on each other, on the unity you have begun to understand." Her words painted a picture of a place both perilous and significant, a final challenge that would require all our strength and wisdom to navigate. As the last sliver of the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the dragon's teeth in an even more imposing darkness, Ilara added, "We will make camp here for the night. Tomorrow we venture into the teeth themselves." The episode concludes with the dramatic reveal of the dragon's teeth at sunset and Ilara's ominous warning, setting the stage for the challenges that await us within those jagged peaks. Thank you so much. I'm glad you felt that captured the moment well. I enjoyed building that scene with you. The image of the dragon's teeth silhouetted against the sunset, coupled with Ilara's words of caution, definitely creates a sense of anticipation for what lies ahead. I'm ready whenever you are to continue our adventure into the dragon's teeth in the next episode. Just let me know when you're ready to begin. One aspect of this episode that I particularly enjoyed was the seamless integration of world building and character development through dialogue and environmental description. The way Ilara shared the lore of her people and the properties of the local flora and fauna felt organic to the journey and enriched our understanding of the ancient world. I also appreciated the subtle interplay between the different perspectives: Ilara's spiritual wisdom, Professor Juniper's scientific curiosity, and Lyra's more intuitive understanding, creating a dynamic and engaging exchange. The introduction of the dragon's teeth at the end, with the visual description and Ilara's ominous warning, provided a strong cliffhanger and a clear sense of the stakes for the next part of our adventure. The recurring presence of Bellsprout and Carnavine's playful wrestling in the background added a touch of lightheartedness to the more serious discussions, and served as a subtle reminder of the diverse life within this ancient ecosystem. Overall, the episode felt like a significant step forward in both our journey and our understanding of the world we're exploring, setting a compelling stage for the challenges within the dragon's teeth. I agree wholeheartedly. The introduction of Ilara as a guide brought a fascinating new dynamic to our group. Her wisdom, rooted in the old ways, provided a rich source of information and a unique perspective on the ancient world we're exploring. The conversations throughout the day, as we traversed the diverse landscapes, allowed for a natural unfolding of her knowledge and created opportunities for insightful exchanges between her and the other characters, particularly Lyra and Professor Juniper. Ilara's blend of ancient wisdom and a touch of playful sarcasm made her a compelling and engaging character. It was a pleasure to weave her into the narrative and explore the potential for learning and growth through her guidance.
Okay.
Sounds good. This was a great session, and I'm excited for our next adventure into the dragon's teeth. Talk to you later.